Hey there, fellow comic fans. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm really excited because I finally got the proof in for the new issue of my series, the Crimebusters, issue number 4, and I'm super excited to share it with everybody. As you know, my Kickstarter for the Crimebusters number 4 just ended about 2.5 weeks ago now. It was successful, and it takes a couple weeks for the money to be sent to me from Kickstarter, but you know what? I couldn't wait. So I went ahead, as soon as the Kickstarter ended successfully, I sent the comic in to the printer. I have the proof back now. And so what's going to happen now from this point is that I've already gone through this, and I've found a number of very, very minor things, but things that I wanted to fix because I wanted this to be as good as possible, as close to perfect as I can get it. And so I've sent it back for more corrections, and so they're going to send me another proof, but the next proof will just be digital. It's not going to be physical. As soon as I get that, I'm going to double check everything, and then I'll give them the go ahead to print it. And so my hope is, since I got to jump on this, I'm hoping that I will have all of the books in hand by the end of July, so that I can send them out to people in August. Now, originally, when I always hedged my bets in terms of the timing. So, when I did the Kickstarter, I was telling people it would be September, October before the physical rewards arrive. But again, I don't have them yet. So there's always a possibility that there'll be some kind of shipping delay or some kind of production delay in terms of the paper shortages and that sort of thing. But barring something unexpected, it looks like I might actually be able to get this out to everybody in August. So I'm really excited for that, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. So in this video, what I want to talk about a little bit is the process that goes into doing the proofs, and just a little bit about just some of the behind the scenes comic book creating stuff that I've been going through. As you know, I've been working on trying to ramp up my production. I want to get more books out faster, because I want to tell more stories, and I also just want to build up my audience so I can build up this as more of a viable business instead of just a hobby. And so the first thing is what the proof process is. So now my printer that I work with is Comics Wellspring, aka Greco Printing, out of Michigan. And one of the reasons that I chose them, there's a few, but one of them was that they do physical proofs. Now, it cost me $10 to get a physical proof, and it's not something that you have to get. Now, you can just get a digital proof if you want instead. So what I do is I get a physical proof sent to me of the regular cover, and then I get digital proofs of all of the variant covers. And what that does is it basically shows me where the trim lines are actually going to be. That's what the digital proofs do. So I can see based on, just to make sure that everything's aligned right with the variant covers. But I want to have the whole comic in a physical proof, because a few reasons. It's easier for me to see the issues physical. Even when you're looking at a digital proof, there's certain things that you will not be able to notice unless you see it printed out, which I'll get into in a minute. But also there's things like, typically things print darker than they look on your screen. Part of that's because the images are backlit, by the screen. So everything's going to appear brighter and lighter on your screen than it does when it's actually printed. So it's a good thing to have to double check the colors to make sure everything's, not too dark. For me, modern coloring in comics is a huge issue for me. I think a lot of modern coloring is very one note, and it's very toned down. There's like a fear of bright colors, and so because they don't want things to be too garish or whatever. But the result is a lot of modern comics seem very muted. There's not very much contrast in them, and a lot of them are very dark. I see a lot of things on Kickstarter and online, just looking at people's stuff on Instagram and other places where indie comic artists are posting their material, and a lot of it is just very dark. So it's something that I am keying on, both in the way that I'm having the book color to begin with, to make sure it's bright and clear and everything's visible, but also when it's printed. I can see it a lot better when it's printed. So I'll give you a look on the inside. I will say, like, the first 3 issues I did in grayscale, um, so I could have some shade variations, but it was basically black and white and different shades of gray. And I've always liked black and white comics, and since I'm colorblind, I thought it would just be faster and cheaper, which it was, and easier to do it without the colors. And I didn't think I'd be losing too much, but now that I've seen it in color, it does look much better in color. And so just to show you, like, some of the pages in color, I'm trying to, even in scenes that are outdoors where it's like nighttime, and there's the woods, so there's greens and browns, there's blacks. I'm still trying to keep it where the coloring is bright and clear. If there's a sequence that where it needs to be dark, we can have it dark. But even then, as you can see, like, I really want everything to be clean and crisp and bright, and I kind of want to have old school throwback colors. And the colors all look good. Actually, obviously I had some worries that it would be too dark when it's printed, but it's not. So I was very happy with that. So let's talk about some of the things that I did find. Now, I made a few changes. They're all very minor, and there was a bit of a dilemma for me. Sending in the revisions is only going to take a couple days, right? So I've sent them the email. I'm recording this on Sunday the 3rd. They have the 4th off. So on the 5th, they're going to be back in the office. So if I had sent them the email to give them the go ahead to print it, that they would have started the process of getting everything printed on the 5th. So what's going to happen now is it's going to take them a couple days to, incorporate the changes, swap the files out so the corrected pages are in there. Then they'll send me new proofs. Then I go over the proofs and then I correct it. So basically we're looking at, instead of the printing process, giving the go ahead to start it on Tuesday, it'll probably be at least Friday before that happens. Now, it's only a few days, but I have 2 conventions coming up. One is on the 16th, Saturday the 16th, and the other Saturday the 23rd. And if I'd given them the go-ahead on the 5th to print it, there's an outside chance I would have had the comics arrive before that first convention. Probably not. But if I give them the go-ahead on Tuesday, they get it printed on Friday and potentially shipped either Friday or Monday. We may be looking at it arriving on Thursday or Friday so that I have them just before the show. With this delay, I'm almost certainly not going to have the comics in time for the 4th issue, in time for the first show, and I may not get them in time for the second show. So there's kind of a big difference in terms of my convention presence, where I'm only doing the 2 shows this summer, and so there's a big difference between me having issue 4 and me not having issue 4 for those. But ultimately, even though all the corrections that I'm making are incredibly minor and probably nobody else would have noticed them, I wanted to have this, like, as clean as possible. So I decided that even though my changes are going to make this like 0.2% better, it was like 99.8% before, and now it'll be 100%. It's worth it to me. It would have bothered me to have the copies with these little tiny things in them, knowing that I could have fixed them. So I decided I'll just risk not having them for the shows. And I'll show you how minor some of these things are. It's like, so on the inside here, we have our recap on the inside front cover. I have this picture of the man in black called Fate, who is acting as like the horror host, explaining what happened in the previous issues. And a couple of his fingers went off the edge. Doesn't really matter. But since I was doing other changes, I moved him just the slight bit over, which had also involved moving one of the word balloons. In the credits, I decided I didn't like, it's supposed to be read across this way, the Crimebusters #4, written and drawn by Scott Harris King, but because I put the credits for the colorist directly underneath it's a little visually confusing, like that it might be people might just read the middle block. So what I did was I took the colorist and I swapped it with this line of stars. So I moved the stars up and the colorist credit underneath it to make that more clear. There was one part where the coloring was messed up on Chuck's hair. Again, it was very tiny, but it made him look like he have a big bump on his forehead in that one panel. And little tiny things, like on this explosion, I had messed around with the colors after I got it from the colorist, and I had made it this yellow, but it was originally this like orange, and I forgot to change that one window. And then there's stuff like, you know, when I have a full bleed panels on the bottom, I try not to have the page numbers, but I accidentally put one here. So I wanted to take away the number 10 on that page, but I forgot to put one, I forgot to put a page number on page 13. So I want to have one added there, like little tiny things like that. And as I mentioned, there's things that you can't see in the digital. So for instance, this is the main one. The letter column, which in this case is just the one page printed on the inside back cover, is perfectly centered, right? And so if you look at the digital proof, it looks perfectly centered, which it is. However, when it's printed in the comic, what it means is that because it's got the book here and the fold and the staple and all the other pages, the margin ends up looking and feeling like it's pushed towards the center, right? Because the visible margin on this side is much bigger than the visible margin on that side. Now, if you were to pull the comic out and like take the cover off and lay it flat, it would look centered. But so what I did was I just moved this over like 1/8 of an inch this way, so there would be more of a margin here. It would look more centered and it would be easier to read this text. That's the sort of thing that you can't see if you're looking just at the digital proof. You're not going to see how it looks in the comic, how it's affected by the other pages in the comic. You know, one of the big things is that I design, when I'm writing, I design in 2-page spreads, right? So I write it so that the last panel of the 2-page spread has some sort of action, a cliffhanger, or sometimes it's dialogue. Let me find an example. Like this, when he's like saying something and then he gets interrupted, he's like, huh? And he's looking, and so I want the reader to be like, what's he looking at? What's he responding to? Then you turn the page, right? You lose that stuff when you're reading it digitally because it's not presented in 2 pages. It's 1 page at a time when you're reading it on a PDF. So you can get a much better sense of the flow when you have the physical proof. And again, with Greco, it's $10 to get a physical proof. And sometimes I get more than one. So you can see behind me some of my previous issues when I had this one here with my thumb, which is the issue 3 Boy Comics variant. There was, we had to work on it a little bit because there's a little pixelation that we had some trouble getting rid of when we were working, when the artist Mark Svensson and I were working together on the files. And so I got a physical proof of that copy just to make sure that it actually looked okay when it was printed. And it looks really cool. Everyone loves that cover. But that was something where for $10, it's worth it to make sure that it's right. Some of the other companies and printers that I looked at when I was first going through this process are companies that are less on demand and they're more like offset. So they have a bigger print run, like you need to print 200 or 500 or something like that. Because of that, and they have to set up the printers, if you want a proof, it's like $250 to get a physical proof. And so it was just all around just more beneficial for me to go with the printer I have because they do things like send the physical proofs, you know. So that's sort of my process when I'm going through here. I also, I still have the digital proofs of the variant covers. I haven't even looked at them. Once I get the final digital proof of the corrected version back, then I'm going to look at all of them at the same time and just make sure that everything's squared up. I'm also doing a new printing of issue 3 because I'm almost sold out of issue 3 unexpectedly. So I'm doing a new printing of that, and so I've got a digital proof for that to check. that's just one of many things that I've had to do this weekend. So, like I wanted to mention, like I'm trying to ramp up things, and what's basically happened is I have now hired an artist, and I'll be doing a whole video about this at some point with an interview with him. I have hired an artist to draw Crimebusters #5. Hopefully, he'll enjoy it, and everyone will like it, and you know, the experience working with him so far has been great, and so hopefully he'll stick around and we'll do more issues because he can draw much faster than I can, and we can. I want to get these issues out much faster. So I'm hoping to get, you know, 3 issues of Crimebusters out a year instead of 1. Um, but, you know, I got him lined up. You know, he had some opening his schedule. We agreed that he was going to draw it for me, and I just needed to get him the script, or at least the beginning of the script. And basically the day that happened, where, you know, we got the contract signed and he's ready to go, was the day I got the proof back. And then I also, at the same time, the Kickstarter sent me the announcement that they were sending me my payout. So now it's time, I've got to send out all my surveys to the Kickstarter backers to make sure I got all the information, because that's, you know, I'm going to be sending out the PDFs of this next week once the money arrives, right? So I had to do that. At the same time, there's another project that I've mentioned a couple times where I'm going to be putting out like 100-page, one in the style of a DC 100-page giant. It's going to be a Crimebuster 80th anniversary special, and I'm going to do another video on this because there's something incredibly cool that I know you guys are going to really love for that, and that involves the cover art, which I don't want to spoil yet until I can show it to you. But that cover art has been off with an inker since March, maybe even February, and so I've been waiting, and the same day that we got this and we got all the other stuff, I got the finished artwork. And so I had approached the colorist who's going to be coloring that, and I'm going to be colorizing issue 1. The 100-page giant is going to have a color version of Crimebusters 1 as one of the stories in it. And so I have the colorist all lined up to do this, but I have to prepare the files. And I have to, there's like a process I have to go through because they were done in grayscale. I have to remove all the grayscale so that that's just the line work. And I still have to do, you know, it's 36 pages. I got to do that. And again, same day. So this weekend I've just been digging myself out of this hole because I have other stuff that I need to be doing, both in terms of my actual job, but also projects going forward. But it's like, you know, I've got all these different projects in various stages, and some of them have time sensitive stuff because of the contracts that I've, you know, signed with people, and they just all came together at the same time. So over this weekend I've just been working. I went through this, I found all the things I needed to change, I made all the corrections, I sent those in. I wrote the first 6 pages of the script for Crimebusters 5, and I also wrote out the plot breakdown for the entire 30-page issue, and I sent that to the artist. So he's working this week. He's going to start working on the interior pages. He's already done the backup story, so I've already got 6 of the pages done, but there's 30 more. He's going to be starting that this week. So I got that done. I sent out all my surveys for Kickstarter, and now what I have left to do is prepare the pages for the colorist. That's, again, 36 pages from Crimebuster #1 that I'm having colorized, but also that cover that I mentioned, that for the 100-page giant I need colored. And the cover for Crimebusters #5, I already have that from my new artist. That's going to be colored, and then I can share all of these upcoming projects, right? And while all this is going on, I'm still waiting for the last 6 pages of art for Uncle Sam, Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam #2, which I was supposed to get a month ago and I still haven't gotten. But once I get those in, I need to have all this cleared off my plate so I can then immediately go into that, add the dialogue and the sound effects, and that'll be ready to go as well. So I'm like, really ramping things up, and I'm at the point now where I have quite a bit in the hole money-wise, because I have money tied up in all of these future projects. That's just sort of the nature of how this works with the comics, is I'm paying people in advance for their artwork. And so, um, I've got Crimebusters number 5 that's out there now that I've started paying people money on. I've got this Crimebuster 100-page giant 80th anniversary special. I've got money tied up in that. I've got a bunch of money tied up in Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam number 2. And then I've got 2 other projects. I want to do a romance, single issue romance comic. And I've already paid someone for some of the art on one of those stories, so I've got money tied up in that project. And then there's a fantasy series that I want to do, and I've just got a couple things that I've done, like a couple pieces of like concept artwork and one like variant cover that I drew just sort of as a test for myself, and I paid someone to color that. So I don't have a lot of money tied up in that, but I've already got some money tied up in that. So I've got 5 different comics out there right now that are in various stages of development that I've already sunk money into. So my focus is really to try and get Crimebusters 4 sent out the door, and then get this 80-page giant and the Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam number 2, these 2 projects that are very close to being finished, get both of them done and get both of them off to Kickstarter this year, so I can recoup my money from those, but also just to get them off my plate so I have more time to work on the future projects. So a lot going on right now. But that's just sort of a behind the scenes look at the process of making comics. So let me know what you think. If you have any questions down below, hopefully this is helpful or interesting to somebody. I've got a lot of really cool stuff that I'm working on, and when I get this stuff back from the colorist, I'm gonna do a video about the Crimebuster 100-page giant, the 80th anniversary special, because that's gonna be my next thing to Kickstarter. I'm hoping to launch it as soon as sometime in August. And I know that you guys in particular here on the Classic Comics YouTube channel are gonna really dig it, because I've got something super cool that only old school collectors are gonna truly appreciate. So this is the sort of thing that's just for the hardcore fans like us. So but I don't want to really get into it until I can show you the artwork, because that's really the only way to understand it. So that's next time, or down the road. It'll be probably a couple weeks before I have that ready. But let me know what you think down below. Any questions about anything, let me know. I'm happy to answer them, and I'll see you next time.